Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Looks like we've got another fascinating deep dive ahead of us. You sent in some research on mental skills training for young athletes,
Mm-hmm.
and looks like you're really interested in how things like visualization and goal setting
Yeah.
can impact their performance,
Yeah.
not just on the field, but in life overall. It's a really interesting case study focusing on the challenges these young athletes face and the techniques that can actually help them. So
Right.
basically, today we're going to break down some of those key concepts,
Yeah.
explore some of those practical techniques, and hopefully give you some tools to help those young athletes develop these skills.
Right.
So it seems like everyone's always talking about physical practice, practice, practice.
Right.
But this is something completely different. This case study is saying mental skills are just as important as physical practice, especially in adolescence.
Yeah, they really are. And we often focus so much on that physical training that we kind of forget that the mental side is just as crucial, especially with these younger athletes. And that's what's so interesting about this case study is that it actually highlights how coaches can integrate these techniques with their adolescent players.
Hmm. So we're really talking about going beyond just the physical practice.
Absolutely.
So are mental skills like another set of muscles you can train?
That's a great way to put it.
Wow.
And just like physical training, it takes practice, it takes dedication, and the benefits are huge. Imagine if you have a young athlete that can actually control their nerves before a big game.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just that ability alone can be the difference between them completely freezing up
Right.
or, playing their best.
I mean, I'm thinking back to my own experiences as a teenager. I could have definitely used some of this mental training.
I think a lot of us could have.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that this case study really digs deep into specific techniques. One of the techniques that it talks about is imagery.
Imagery. I've heard that before. Is that just like daydreaming about winning?
Well, it's similar, but it's much more structured, and it's much more deliberate. Imagine a basketball player, for example, at the free throw line.
Mhm.
With imagery, they're not just picturing that ball going through the hoop. They're feeling the texture of the ball, they're hearing the squeak of their sneakers on the court, they're even smelling the sweat in the gym. They're engaging all of their senses to make that experience as real as possible, all in their mind.
So they're basically practicing in their head.
Exactly.
Does that actually make them better when they get out there on the court?
It really does.
Wow.
And there's actually some really cool neuroscience behind it.
Really?
Yeah. When athletes vividly imagine themselves performing that action, the brain regions involved in that action are activated,
Oh.
almost as if they were physically doing it.
So it's not just wishful thinking.
Right.
It's almost like building muscle memory, but for your mind.
That's a great way to think about it. And think about how powerful that can be, especially for young athletes. Yeah.
Who are dealing with all of that pressure.
And expectations.
Absolutely.
Right. So is there different types of imagery?
Well, the case study actually makes a distinction between traditional visualization, where an athlete might do this on their own,
Okay.
and guided imagery, where a coach actually helps them through the process. So you can imagine a coach talking a young gymnast through a difficult routine before a competition,
Right.
helping them see each move flawlessly in their mind's eye.
So almost like having a coach inside your head,
Right.
helping you stay focused and calm
Exactly.
when you need it the most.
Yeah.
So how do we know if this stuff actually works? Are there studies that actually show that imagery helps young athletes perform better?
There are some really impressive studies. For example, one study on youth soccer players found that those who use imagery actually reported increased self-confidence and performed better in games.
Really?
Yeah,
Compared to those who didn't?
compared to those who didn't. And they were able to actually visualize success and then translate that into real-world results. Wow, that's amazing.
It is.
Okay, so we've got imagery. What else is in this case study?
Well, the case study also dives into goal setting,
Okay.
and they specifically recommend this SMART approach to goal setting. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
Why is that?
Well, imagine a young athlete setting a goal to be a better swimmer.
Right.
That's a nice thought, but where do they even begin?
It's very vague.
It is.
So what's a SMART goal in that situation?
Instead of just wanting to be better, a SMART goal would be something like, I will improve my 100-meter freestyle time by 2 seconds over the next 3 months by practicing specific drills twice a week.
Oh, wow.
That's something they can actually work towards, and they can measure their progress.
Instead of just, I want to get better at this,
Yeah.
it's like breaking it down into those little steps.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why it's called a framework.
Okay.
It's like building a house. You have to have a blueprint.
So it's almost like giving these young athletes a roadmap
Exactly.
to follow.
And that sense of progress, no matter how small, can be a huge motivator, especially for teenagers
Yeah.
who might be really easily discouraged if they set these unrealistic expectations.
Oh, for sure. Teenagers can be tough.
Absolutely.
So we've got imagery and we've got SMART goals, two really cool tools for these young athletes. But something tells me it's not always smooth sailing when you're trying to implement these techniques.
Right.
I mean, teenagers are teenagers, so I bet there are some unique challenges that they face when it comes to mental training.
You're absolutely right. Adolescence is a time of huge physical and emotional changes.
Yeah.
And that can definitely impact their ability to really engage in mental training effectively.
Okay.
Think about it. Their self-confidence can fluctuate so wildly from one day to the next.
Yeah.
So it can make it really hard to fully commit to techniques like visualization.
Yeah.
And then you add in the social pressures that they're navigating, constantly comparing themselves to others. And it can make it even harder to set and achieve their own goals.
Yeah. I can only imagine. Social media probably has a huge impact on this too.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I feel like I'm constantly bombarded with images of like
Right.
perfect bodies and amazing achievements. It's got to be really hard to filter through all of that.
Especially as a teenager.
Yeah.
And it's like they're dealing with this whole other level of pressure
Right.
that we didn't even have to think about when we were growing up.
So as coaches, as parents, as mentors, we need to be really sensitive to that.
Yes.
And create an environment where they feel safe to actually experiment with these mental skills.
Absolutely.
Without fear of failure.
Yes.
And without judgment.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the what and the why of these mental skills, but what about the how?
Right.
How do we actually take these techniques and weave them into their training routines and into their everyday lives?
Well, the research has some really practical tips for that.
Okay, good.
And one of the first strategies that they highlight is incorporating imagery and goal setting into daily practice. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Okay.
Even just starting each practice with a few minutes of guided imagery can make a huge difference.
So are you picturing like a basketball team? They're all huddled together. They close their eyes and their coach is guiding them through this visualization before practice even starts.
Exactly. And, the coach could be walking them through, feeling the weight of the ball in their hands, the squeak of their shoes on the court, even the swish of the net as they're sinking those perfect shots.
It's almost like setting the tone
It is.
for a really great practice session.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool.
And what about goal setting?
Yeah, how can coaches actually do that on a day-to-day basis?
It can be as simple as helping each athlete set a very specific goal for that day's practice.
Okay.
Maybe it's improving their passing accuracy or working on a new defensive move. The key is to make sure those goals are challenging, but attainable.
Right.
So that they feel that sense of accomplishment at the end of the session.
So building those mental muscles along with their physical muscles.
Exactly.
Okay. But what happens when practice is over? Does the mental training just stop?
Ideally, no. And the research also emphasizes the importance of encouraging autonomous practice and post-performance reflection. So athletes should be encouraged to practice visualization and goal setting on their own outside of those structured training sessions. And then after a game or a competition, it's really crucial to take some time to reflect on their performance,
Okay.
both the good and the bad.
So instead of dwelling on a missed shot or a lost game, they're encouraged to think about what they did well, what they can improve,
Right.
and how they use those mental skills during the situation.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's a learning experience,
It is.
no matter what.
And another crucial strategy that the research highlights is social support. It's not enough for just the athlete to be on board with these techniques.
Right.
Coaches, teammates, and even parents need to understand the value of this mental training and create an environment where it's embraced and encouraged.
It's like creating a culture
Yes.
where it's okay to talk about these things,
Absolutely.
where athletes feel supported in their mental training just as much as they feel supported in their physical training.
Exactly.
So what would that look like in a real-world setting?
Well, imagine a high school basketball team that incorporates regular imagery sessions into their practice routine. The coach could lead these sessions, or they could even bring in a sports psychologist
Oh, yeah.
to guide the team through specific visualization techniques.
And then maybe even after each game they get together.
Yeah.
They have a meeting.
Yeah.
They don't just talk about what happened on the court.
Right.
but also how they use those mental skills during the game.
Exactly.
That's awesome. What about like a peer mentorship program?
That's a great idea.
Yeah, where maybe some of those more experienced athletes can share their own experiences and insights with the younger athletes.
That could be really powerful, especially for those younger athletes who are just starting out with mental training,
Yeah.
and it creates that sense of camaraderie and
Yes.
support.
This is great. I love how we're shifting the paradigm from just focusing on talent and physical ability to really developing the whole athlete mind, body, and spirit. This is great stuff.
I know, it's really exciting.
So do we actually have any, like, proof that this actually works?
Yeah?
Does the research cite any real-world examples of teens or athletes
Yes,
who have actually seen success
it does.
using these techniques?
Yeah. There are so many inspiring stories of teams and athletes who have used mental skills training to achieve some incredible results. One example that comes to mind is a youth soccer team that was struggling with anxiety,
Okay.
low confidence,
Uh,
and they started incorporating guided imagery and goal setting into their practices. And within a few weeks, their coach noticed a dramatic shift.
what kind of shift?
The players seemed so much more relaxed and focused during games. They communicated better on the field, and they even started taking more risks, trusting their instincts and abilities.
Wow.
And the best part is, their performance improved significantly. They went from being one of the bottom teams in their league to actually competing for the championship.
Wow, that's powerful.
It is.
That's a powerful testament to how these techniques can really help athletes tap into their full potential.
Absolutely.
And it's not just about winning championships. It's about developing those life skills that'll benefit them long after their playing days are over.
Yeah, you got it.
Resilience, focus, confidence. These are qualities that will serve them well in every area of their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting to think about the ripple effect that this can have, not just on the field, but in their personal and professional life.
For sure. That's amazing to think that something as simple as visualizing success or setting SMART goals can have such a profound impact on these young athletes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling inspired just hearing about it.
Me too. And you know what's really exciting is that this isn't just limited to sports.
No.
Think about all the areas in your own life where you could benefit from these same mental skills. That project you've been putting off, that skill you've always wanted to learn, that dream you've been too afraid to chase.
Yeah.
What if you applied the principles of visualization and goal setting to those areas?
Okay, my mind is racing now.
Right.
I'm thinking about that presentation I have coming up.
Uh-huh.
What if, instead of dreading it, I actually took some time to visualize myself, giving the presentation,
Yeah.
feeling confident, engaging the audience, and then feeling that sense of accomplishment afterward?
Exactly.
It's like harnessing the power of your own mind
It is.
to create that reality you want.
And remember, it's a process. You don't have to be perfect at it right away.
Okay.
Just start by incorporating small mental exercises into your daily routine.
Yeah.
And just see what happens.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive so far, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of what's possible
Right.
with this mental training. Is there anything else you think our listeners should know
Yeah.
as they start exploring this for themselves?
I think the most important thing is to approach it with a sense of curiosity.
Yeah.
And a willingness to experiment. There are so many resources out there, books, articles, podcasts, even apps that can really guide you deeper into these techniques.
So don't be afraid to try those different approaches
Exactly.
and find what works for you.
Yes.
It's like we're giving our listener a whole new toolkit to work with.
We are.
And it's not just about achieving external success, it's also about that inner strength, that resilience, that growth mindset that'll help them navigate any challenge
Yeah, absolutely.
life throws their way.
Beautifully said.
And remember, this is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There will be setbacks.
Of course.
There will be moments of doubt,
Yeah.
but just keep learning, keep growing, and never underestimate the power of your own mind.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
This has been a fantastic deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much about mental training for athletes, but really for anyone who wants to level up their performance in any area of life.
Me too.
Thank you for sharing your insights with us.
It was my pleasure. And it's always a joy to talk about the connection between the mind and performance.
To our listener, thank you so much for sending us these amazing sources and inspiring us to dive deep into this topic. We hope you've gained some valuable takeaways and a renewed sense of possibility.
Yes.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing those limits.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the deep dive.
See, and then, you throw in social media.
Oh,
It's like
yeah.
a whole other
That's
level.
pretty tough.
It really is. It's a whole other level of pressure that they have to deal with that we didn't even think about.
So we, as coaches, as parents, as mentors,
Yeah.
we really need to be sensitive to all of that.
We do.
We need to create a safe space for these kids to explore these things without judgment,
Absolutely. A safe space to experiment.
without fear of failure.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the what, we talked about the why,
Mm-hmm.
but what about the how?
Right.
How do we actually take these techniques and put them into practice? How do we weave them into their everyday lives?
Right. Well, the research actually has some really practical tips for that.
Okay.
One of the first strategies they highlight is incorporating imagery and goal setting into daily practice.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Hmm.
Just starting each practice with a few minutes of guided imagery can make a big difference.
So you're picturing like a basketball team.
Uh-huh.
They're all huddled together before practice,
Yeah.
eyes closed. The coach is kind of walking them through this visualization.
Exactly.
What would that sound like?
So the coach could walk them through feeling the weight of the ball in their hands, the squeak of their shoes on the court, the swish of the net as they're sinking those perfect shots.
Wow.
It's all about setting the tone for a really successful practice.
So it's not just physical, it's mental too.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, so we've got that guided imagery. What about the goal setting?
Yeah.
How can coaches incorporate that into those daily routines?
Well, it can be as simple as helping each athlete set one specific goal
Okay,
for that day's practice.
so maybe it's working on their passing,
Yeah.
or maybe it's trying a new defensive move, something very specific.
And the key is making sure that goal is challenging, but it's still attainable.
Right, so they can achieve it
Exactly, so that they feel that sense of accomplishment
at the end.
at the end of that practice.
Okay, so they're building those mental muscles alongside their physical muscle.
Go along with them.
What happens when practice is over? Does the mental training stop?
Well, ideally it shouldn't.
Okay,
And the research actually emphasizes the importance of encouraging what they call autonomous practice and post-performance reflection.
okay, what's that?
So athletes should be encouraged to practice visualization and goal setting on their own outside of those structured training sessions.
Just even when they're not on the court or on
Okay.
the field.
Exactly. And then after a game or a competition, it's really crucial to take time to reflect
Yeah.
on the performance, both the good and the bad.
So instead of just focusing on the negative, like, oh, I missed that shot or we lost the game,
Right.
it's about thinking about what went well,
Yeah.
what could be improved, and how do they use their mental game during those situations.
Exactly. And, it helps them learn from those experiences.
Okay, so it's a learning experience no matter what the outcome is.
Exactly.
I like that. So is there anything else that coaches and parents should know about how to help these young athletes?
Well, there is one more crucial strategy that the research highlights,
Okay,
and it's social support.
okay,
It's not enough for just the athlete to be on board with these techniques.
right.
Coaches, teammates, and even parents need to understand how valuable this mental training can be and create an environment where it's embraced and encouraged.
So we need to make it okay to talk about these things
We do.
and create a space where these athletes feel supported in their mental training just as much as their physical training. Yeah.
Exactly, a culture of support.
What would that look like in the real world? What would that look like if a team was actually doing that?
Well, imagine a high school basketball team that incorporates regular imagery sessions into their practice routine.
Okay.
The coach could lead those sessions, or they could even bring in a sports psychologist
Oh, that's a good idea.
to guide the team through some specific visualization techniques.
And then they could have team meetings after each game
Uh-huh.
where they're not just analyzing, the plays and the strategy.
Right.
They're also talking about how did we use our mental game during this game?
Exactly. It becomes part of the conversation.
What about a peer mentorship program
That's a great idea.
where maybe some of the more experienced athletes can mentor the younger ones
Yeah, that could be really powerful.
and help them navigate those challenges?
And it builds that team camaraderie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that support system.
I love this. I love how we're shifting the paradigm from just focusing on talent and physical ability to really developing the whole athlete,
I know, it's really exciting.
mind, body, and spirit.
It's a holistic approach.
This is great stuff. So do we have any proof that this stuff actually works?
We do.
Does the research cite any real-world examples
Yes.
of teams or athletes that have seen success using these techniques.
It does. There are so many inspiring stories of teams and athletes who have used mental skills training to achieve incredible results.
Okay, give me one.
Well, one example that comes to mind is a youth soccer team that was struggling with anxiety and low confidence.
Okay.
They started incorporating guided imagery and goal setting into their practices, and within a few weeks, their coach noticed a dramatic shift.
Really? What did he see?
Well, the players seemed much more relaxed and focused during games. They
Mm.
communicated better on the field. They even started taking more risks, trusting their instincts and abilities.
Wow.
And the best part is their performance improved significantly. They went from being one of the bottom teams in their league to competing for the championship.
Wow, that's a powerful example.
It is a powerful testament to how these techniques can help athletes tap into their full potential.
And it's not just about winning. It's about developing those life skills that are going to serve them well
Absolutely.
long after they're done
You
playing.
got it.
Resilience, focus, confidence, these are qualities that will help them in every area of their life.
Absolutely. And it's so exciting to think about the ripple effect that this can have, not just on the field, but in their personal and professional lives as well.
It's really amazing to think that something as simple as just visualizing success or setting those SMART goals can have such a profound impact on these young athletes.
I know.
I'm feeling inspired just hearing about all of this.
Me too. And you know what's even more exciting
But
is
yeah.
that this isn't just limited to sports.
Oh, yeah.
Think about all the areas in your own life where you could benefit from these same mental skills.
Okay.
That project you've been putting off, that skill. You've always wanted to learn that dream you've been too afraid to chase. What if you applied these principles of visualization and goal setting to those areas?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
My mind is racing. I'm thinking about that presentation I have coming up.
Mm-hmm.
What if, instead of dreading it, I actually took some time to visualize myself, confidently delivering that presentation,
Right.
engaging with the audience, and feeling that sense of accomplishment afterward?
Exactly.
It's like you're harnessing the power of your own mind
You are.
to create the reality that you want.
And remember, it's a process.
Right.
You don't have to be perfect at it right away.
Okay.
Just start incorporating those small mental exercises into your daily routine
Yeah.
and see what happens.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
Right.
And honestly,
I know.
it feels like we've only just scratched the surface of what's possible with this mental skills training.
It really does.
Is there anything else you think our listeners should know as they kind of start to explore this for themselves?
I think the most important thing is to approach this with a sense of curiosity and a willingness to experiment.
Yeah.
You know, there are tons of resources out there. Books, articles, podcasts, even apps that can guide you deeper into these techniques.
Okay.
So don't be afraid to try different approaches and see what works best for you.
Yeah, I love that. It's like we're giving our listener a whole new toolkit to work with.
We are.
And it's not just about achieving that external success. It's also about developing that inner strength, the resilience, and that growth mindset that will help them navigate any challenge that life throws their way.
Beautifully said. And remember, this is a journey,
Yeah.
not a destination.
Right.
There will be setbacks and there will be moments of doubt. But the key is to keep learning, keep growing, and never underestimate the power of your own mind.
This has been an awesome deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much, not just about mental training for athletes, but for anyone who really wants to level up their performance
Exactly.
in any area of life.
It applies to so much more than just sports.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today.
It was my pleasure. It's always a joy to talk about the connection between the mind and performance.
To our listeners, thank you for sending us these amazing sources and inspiring us to dive deep into this topic. We hope you've gained some valuable takeaways from this, and maybe even a renewed sense of possibility. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing those limits. And that's it for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.